We live in an age of meaningful jewelry. We wear little gold crosses to announce to the world that we're Christians, little flag pins on our lapels to say that we're patriots. And that is all some people need to see. A flag in your lapel and a gold cross around your neck, and you may declare yourself a Christian patriot. Words mean things, but words are also cheap. And there are dollar store patriots who've never sacrificed anything for anybody, as well as people advertising themselves as Christians whose lives show no evidence of it at all. These two things have this in common. You can declare something yourself that is completely untrue and get away with it because, well, let's face it, it's a society. We tend to paddle around in the shallow end of the pool. We don't think much about the deeper meanings of life. And here you are, my friends of the deconstruction community, looking for something deeper, more meaningful, yet surrounded by people whose greatest dream is the new iPhone. So let's talk about that. Suppose a friend shows you a picture of their baby, their new baby. They clearly adore and believe to be the most beautiful baby ever to be born. But what you see is a resemblance to George on Seinfeld. So, do you tell them that? No, you don't. You tell them their baby is beautiful, which is what they want to hear. People tell each other little white lies once in a while to spare each other's feelings. It's an example of thinking one thing but saying another. It was just a moment. It harmed no one and preserved your friendship. But actually being one thing and pretending to be another, well, that's in a different category all itself. And it can cause lasting harm. And that's the case sometimes with faith and religion. Faith, what you believe privately, and religion, the public face of that faith, ought to go together like Bert and Ernie, but sometimes that relationship is more like Wile E, Coyote, and the Roadrunner. We can find ourselves in church that doesn't represent our private faith at all. And it may take us some time to figure that out. We might be there because that's where our family has always gone. Our parents are there. We have cousins and maybe an aunt or an uncle. We could find ourselves in a church that preaches more politics than gospel, and you're urged to take sides on an issue that either you don't care about at all, or the side you would probably pick puts you at odds with everyone else. That's because the nature of people in churches are anything but simple. And that means the time may come when you face the uncomfortable position of knowing that you need to move on. Because Sunday after Sunday after Sunday you hear messages that don't in any way speak to you. And this is not what you signed on for. And that makes you ask yourself, what did I sign on for? Perhaps what brought you to the face was the simple and inspiring life of Jesus. It wasn't the lure of heaven or the threat of hell. Those things didn't enter your decisions. No, it was the life of Jesus, pure and simple. His compassion, his mercy, his ability to love the unlovable. That alone could change the world, and you felt drawn to him. And you wanted to be a part of it. It was like falling in love in a way. Those distant days seemed like a dream, and then you woke up here in your present reality, where that compassion and love and empathy which had so inspired you are in the minds of some weaknesses to be avoided. The world has simply changed around you. I can sense you thinking something like this. Wait a minute, isn't this supposed to be about religious deconstruction? Well, yes, it is. But in the last time I talked to you, I said that there's a lot of facets in the religious deconstruction arena, and I promised you that we would look at all of them. And this is one of them. This is how some people wind up in harsh and destructive forms of religion, not intentionally, not because they're harsh themselves, not because they have any evil in them. They wound up where they wound up because they were made to feel comfortable and wanted and valuable. They were seduced by comfort, by the familiar. And some of you might have wound up in a church outside of the religious group, or maybe even a cult, because you were made to feel welcome in an otherwise cold and indifferent world. But you, in the deconstructive community, you didn't stay in your box, in your assigned cubbyhole. Maybe you learned something new about yourself or others. Maybe you read some subversive literature, perhaps Jesus' words in the Gospels. Or perhaps you've been told everyone that wasn't a Christian was hopelessly intent on doing evil. But what you found using your own eyes and ears was people, though not perfect, that were more worthy of your admiration and respect than some of the good Christians you knew. All this needed thinking about, and you thought about it. Religion is just organized faith. The early church, those first few centuries after Jesus physically lived among us, was faith organized. A community of people. A community that can do things that individuals on their own can't. So organized faith can accomplish good in the world. And there are churches and other faith-based organizations that do just that. Things that benefit their communities, things that are about filling needs, about generosity, about being the hands and feet of Christ in a very tangible way. Doing things that one person can't do by themselves. On the other hand, it can be truthfully said that sometimes religion is what happens when faith gets old, moving slower, spending more time taking care of itself than anything else it does, and in general just keeping its head above water. Now, it's easier to settle for caricatures and stereotypes, and after they've been repeated hundreds of times, it's tempting to believe them. That is nowhere near as difficult as thinking something through and weighing the evidence. And yes, there are churches that care about money and beautiful buildings, or there are churches that are a little more than retail outlets for politics. There are great churches, charitable and generous. There are other churches that are just terrible. You can make sweeping generalizations about churches and usually be wrong. People are a complicated lot, and many things can be true at the same time. People wind up in these groups for all kinds of reasons, but mostly because they felt welcome. And making you feel welcome can be authentic and loving, and should be. Churches ought to be better at that. But other times, it's anything but that. It's a recruiting tool. The thing is, it takes some time and experience to figure that out. And sometimes you hear a person say after going to church, I didn't get much out of church today. Well, if the church's main purpose is to make them feel good, and they didn't meet that expectation, I guess it did fail then. But couldn't it be that they, or you, expected the wrong thing to begin with? Now, there's nothing wrong with feeling secure and comforted, and religion does that. But a religion that truly reflects your faith, our faith, will also challenge us to be what our faith said we should be. Are we generous with our time and attention as we should be? Are we compassionate and forgiving? Are we just? Do we love mercy and walk humbly in life? Because that's the stuff of which faith is made. Look, I've talked a lot about churches, more than I intended, and if you weren't going to a church right now for any number of valid reasons, you may feel a little left out. If the choice were simply religion or faith, I'd urge you to move towards authentic faith every time. But life rarely offers us such clear choices. Faith and religion are different things, but they can exist in the same time and place as well. Our relationship with faith And churches and religion changes with age, with what we learn, with who we keep company with, and what we read, with our hopes and our disappointments. Life is endlessly complex and can change in a heartbeat. So if we're looking for a eureka, I found it moment, we're almost certainly going to be disappointed. And religion is based on assumptions about faith that others have made for you, usually some centuries ago. These are called doctrines. There's a donut shop in my town that has what they call a pre-selected assortment. It's a box of popular donuts and Bismarcks and pastries that most people like. And that's okay when you're talking about donuts, but it's not so okay when you're talking about doctrines or traditions that other people have decided that you need to believe to be what they consider a real Christian. That kind of thinking has led to Christianity being defined not by how you live, whether you're loving, humble, and generous to those around you, but by whether you believe the right things. And that puts God in a box that limits him, while it prevents you and us from appreciating the wonder and the mystery of faith. Christian means Christ-like, and if you've looked around at the public face of Christianity, the church, and find it to be not at all like Jesus, that is probably what planted the seed in your mind that grew into what's now called religious deconstruction. So you're right to be skeptical, right to be asking questions. For example, the doctrine of original sin, which goes all the way back to the creation stories, is a real sacred cow in some churches, and questioning it can cause you real problems. Some groups have entire herds of these sacred cows, but if you look at them up close, they're just cows. So that's one of the things religious deconstruction is about. Going through this box of pre-selected doctrines and looking at each one and making decisions about what is worth keeping and what isn't. What's really about faith and what's not. And that's a good starting point, asking, is this about love or fear? About being cared for or about being manipulated? In the meantime, this is Les from Springfield, and I think if you're watching and listening to me rather than a rerun of Gilligan's Island or something, till next time, keep asking questions. Be skeptical. Doubt is often not the end of the faith, as you might have been told, but it's a path to a deeper one.